Hey there, this is a review for Castles and Crusades campaign. This session 35. We had 3 players for this session, one of them being a surprise, which was great. We had Barry, the characters, we had the player characters Barry, Rhonin, and Spraull for this session. So we started off with the group. They were in Arden, and Barry had set up as a means of probably less of a humanitarian effort than more of a lucrative monetary effort with the chieftain to run supplies up to Highhold, the town of Highhold, which another one of the characters, Artemis, is from. But Highhold was hit, one of the first towns hit by the Bugbear war chief, Lord Bolg, when his warband came south, and the fate of the town was kind of up in arms. Like, nobody really knew. They've rescued some prisoners, but nobody had any concrete info on the status of the town, and the chieftain was very curious about that. He also had told Barry that he had already sent Lork and his pack of wolves north to investigate Highhold and see what was going on as well. So Barry has now kind of become a merchant of sorts. He put a big sign on his car, his big wagon called Fireball Freight, and he gave instructions to the others that were traveling with him that if they were attacked by bandits or whatever, that they needed to leave one alive so they could spread the tale of Fireball Freight, and maybe they could become legends or infamous. I'm not sure which. Prior to leaving Arden, they did do a couple things. Barry talked to his mentor, Sion, and asked him about the wizard, the Eldani wizard Kellic, who had stolen the gemstone egg from Cyrilliax. And he also asked the bard Tuller about that, and neither one of them knew anything about that. They just knew that, you know, Eldani wizards are famous for worshiping dragons and such like that, but they didn't know that wizard in particular. Sion did tell him that gemstone dragons aren't from this realm; they're actually from another realm, and he didn't even know that Cyrilliax was layered underneath the Edendor Mountains. He wasn't aware of that. He did tell Barry that during the Age of Arcanum, which happened like 2,000 years ago in our history and of the setting, that the gemstone dragons took part in the end of that age, but he didn't really elaborate on that. But he didn't have a whole lot of information. He did talk to him also about the crystals that Kellic was collecting from the crystal caverns underneath the Edendor Mountains, and he believed them to be. They give off an aura of magic, but they're more of maybe like a conduit. They help empower things, and he mentions the staff that the crystal staff that Barry has, and it has one fiery gem in it. So we'll see where that goes eventually. We had, what else did we have? We had Rhonin. He was spending some time in contemplation. He feels the gods are now pleased. He had a whole thing where he was brought back, and or a couple characters were brought back to include Brea. Now the characters are dead. We lost Brea and Riska. So he, in Ronin's mind, he believes that the gods are pleased because the scales have been balanced. That they shouldn't have been brought back. So that whole thing has had a very profound effect on Rhonin and changing him, his personality, which is pretty cool because it all happened in game, wasn't planned. It just was stuff that came about because of the game. Yeah, he's basically found religion. He worships, the name escapes me, but it's a death god. He worships him now. And he doesn't drink anymore. He doesn't drink at all. Like, he went through a spell where he actually drank to, I think, the impression I got, was he drank to cope with a lot of things too. Some of the things that they've seen, some deaths and stuff like that. But he doesn't drink at all now, which actually greatly concerns Spraull, who his god is Throster, who's basically a beer god. So Throster drinks on the daily, and for someone not to drink at all is kind of odd to him. And speaking of Spraull, he spends a lot of time, because of their shared experience of being prisoners of Bolg's forces. He checks in on Rhonin a lot and just keeps an eye on him to make sure he's doing all right. And that has kind of bonded them a little bit, I think. Maybe not like overtly like closeness, but like I think the impression I got was that Spraull definitely is concerned about him and Rhonin and his well-being. Prior to leaving Arden with their wagon full of supplies, Barry is approached by this halfling woman named Esmeralda Whitfoot, and she asks if she can have passage to Highhold. She is from the town of Mosshaven, which is south of Arden by a week. It's also where Cosmo is from. And she goes on to explain that she has family that lives in Highhold, and that she's been sent by the rest of her family to see about. They've heard, you know, of Bolg's forces. They didn't get as far south as Mosshaven, but they've heard about what's been going on, and they're concerned about these family members. So they've sent Esmeralda to check on them, and Barry agrees, and they depart soon thereafter. And Tula accompanies them as well. They're on the road. It's a couple of weeks. If they were to go by foot, it would probably take them a couple of weeks to get to Highhold. But I use very vague distances because I don't like math, and it just makes it easier. But it's about half that distance by cart, and so they strike off. And the first few days, this area is pretty pacified with enemies, with all the fighting and stuff, and Bolg's forces being routed. There's not a lot of fighting or threat in this immediate area at this point. So they get like through the first 3 days relatively unscathed, but it's unscathed. And then, but the morning of the fourth day or whatever, third day, they start off, excuse me, and excuse me, they start off and their wagon is attacked. The ground erupts next to them, and this boulet had comes up out of the earth and attacks their wagon, and quickly does a number on it. Like, Barry's wagon's driven by pulled by 12 oxen, because they were all he could afford at the time when he got it. It's a pretty good fight, and he loses 4, almost 5 oxen out of his 12, and he even gets hit too. Like, it takes a swipe at him and hits him, and it's a pretty good fight. But they put up a really good fight back, and we had some spell casting by Barry. Rhonin was putting on a clinic with that new oath bow that he got from Cyrilliacs. That worked really well. He was doing really well. The boulet is pretty tough as far as like its armor class goes, and had a decent amount of hit points. The interesting thing about using the boulet is I had never used one before, and I'm currently playing the computer role-playing game Pathfinder Kingmaker, and I fought one, and I mentioned it to my buddy Dave, and he's like, "Oh, I've never fought one of those before," and I was thinking, man, I've never used one before, so I was like, well, we'll make this, we'll make an encounter. So we did that. So that was fun. They end up defeating it. Then they're in kind of a rough shape though, because they've lost 4 out of 12 oxen, so it's going to be a little bit of a slower travel time. So they end up spending a day there because they butcher the 4 oxen that they have. They try to butcher the boulet, but because they want the shell, to maybe sell or make into something. But that doesn't really work out, so they leave it behind. They drag it off the road and leave it behind with the thought that when they come back, it'll probably be picked, you know, clean from scavengers, and maybe it'll be easier to get the shell then. So they move on. Because we also had to do a little search on that to get some info. Like, the thing's about 12 feet long and about 4,000 pounds. So, because they had talked about like building a makeshift cart and throwing it on the back and dragging it behind them, which really would not have worked out. So they did the smart thing and just left it behind, and hopefully they'll be able to get back to it. So the rest of the journey, no problems. We made some random rolls for encounters. They didn't have any, so they actually get to, they travel up through the jagged hills and they reach Highhold. And the way I described it was basically if they thought of like Edoras from Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, you know, the movie and stuff. So there's this walled town on this hill. And as they get closer to it, they realize that that town is not in good shape. The gates are smashed. The two towers that are next to the gate, watchtowers, are smashed and burned. And so they leave the cart behind, the wagon behind. Barry's got a couple guys that Teamsters that manage that anyway, so he doesn't have to. So they watched over that, and they proceed on foot, and they go into Highhold. And it's basically a ruin, and there's burned and smashed buildings, and they see where like these huge rocks that are in the street, and they realize they're probably thrown by giants, because there's, you know, corresponding buildings that are just smashed all to pieces and with big holes in them from these rocks, and there's dead bodies all over the place, but they're old, like nothing fresh. Esmeralda kind of panics at this point, and she like kind of leads them through the city to her relative's house, and it's Bodo and Melba Greenhand, and they were known as farmers and herbalists in town, and she leads them to their home, which is in basically ruin, but they don't find any bodies, and looking around, they specifically start looking for like halfling sized bodies, and they don't find any. So they're searching around a little bit, and they hear the sounds of battle. So they move up kind of stealthily. Plenty of places to hide, so even though they're not stealthy characters, they were able to get up, and they come up to what would be the town square. And in the center of it, they see this woman, and she's surrounded by orcs, and she's wielding a two-handed axe, a bearded axe, in the Castles and Crusades rules. And she's got a wound like on her thigh. She's bleeding from, but she doesn't look deterred by that. Like, she's like very ferocious looking, and there's half a dozen or so orcs around her, and there's a few that are on the ground dead that she's already taken care of. And they end up surprising the orcs and helping her, and they make pretty quick work of the orcs. And then they talk to her, and she tells them that her name is Highhold. One of the things before they actually make introductions is when I'm describing her, she's got like these dark hair, braids. She's got paint on her, like there's paint on her face, and they asked, well, does she look like she would be from this village and town? And actually, no. Although none of their characters met. My friend Chris's alternate character, he plays a barbarian. He has an alternate character that he plays. He's played in like one session that's more from further north than here. It's a barbarian. But one of the things I told him was it kind of reminded them of him. And the way she was fighting, it reminded them of Agrax, Spraull's brother, who is a barbarian. And she is, in fact, a barbarian from the north. There's more to her story that hasn't been revealed yet, but I'm sure it'll happen at some point. But they end up helping her. They make quick work of the orcs. Bothild, this became very interesting when they started interacting with her, because I have a picture that I found online. I use a lot of pictures from different art and stuff for NPCs and sometimes terrain and areas if I can find something that really fits. And I did in this session. So Spraull, being a cleric, he offers to heal her. But like there was this whole, I don't know if I want to, if smitten is the right word, but he was very taken by her, and so was Barry. And so she agreed to let Spraull heal her. And Barry was kind of sullen about that because he wanted to bandage her up. And it reminded me of like when, so they were kind of going back and forth. And she didn't have any really words with Barry, and Spraull heals her and puts a bandage on her and all this stuff. And it really reminded me, if you've ever watched the movie Conan the Destroyer, the thief in that, when he's trying to put some salve on Zula, the female warrior, and it just reminded me of that whole scene. And Barry's response to all that was very funny. He was kind of like sulking, and really well played by both Dave and Matt, and the rest of us got to just watch because it was funny. And what was funny about that was, even funnier about that was, Steve, who plays Rhonin, described Rhonin like watching that and laughing, like watching that whole thing transpire, which was a kind of a big deal because Ronin's been very, since his capture, he's not been a mirthful person at all. Like he's been very dark and gothy is what, he's gone goth is how we basically describe it. And so for him to laugh at that, it was pretty cool. So it was a really fun moment. I can't wait to see that play out some more and see how it goes. She tells them that there's nobody living here in the in Highhold, and she was just here trying to scavenge stuff, and that the survivors are in the nearby forest, and she offers to lead them. I think they told her that they have supplies and stuff, so she offers to lead them to where they're at. So, and they agree. So she leads them into the forest. They send them. I think if I remember right, they go with her. They don't bring the cart first. They go with her, and then they send for it. So it basically leads them into this forest, and there's this old tower, this old stone tower, and it's like, and surrounding it are a bunch of like tents, and they see a bunch of people in various states of conditions. They've been living off the land, and they have a lot of wounded, and there's a whole tent set up for the wounded. As they're entering the town, they hear this little refugee camp. They hear the hooting of an owl, and Buthild responds in kind, and then they get another one. So she leads them in. That was a signal. They see people hiding in the rocks and the trees that are watching for anybody approaching the refugee camp. They get in there. She brings them to who basically the leader is this man named Gormon, and he welcomes them, especially when he finds out that they have supplies, and they bring the supplies in shortly thereafter. They talk about they see this one tent that is basically the infirmary, and there's this young woman tending them, and she bears a resemblance to Artemis, one of the other PCs. Wasn't with them, but who's from Highhold, and Spraull ends up going in there to help out, lend his divine healing to help her, and he treats the most serious. There's people in there that are missing limbs, and this woman, her name is Anya Kane, and she's not a cleric, or she has no magical healing, so she's just healing with bandages and herbs and stuff like that. So she's pretty much at her limit, and she's running out of supplies because they find out that Melba and Bodo, Esmeralda's cousins, they had gone off to find more herbs and stuff, and they have not come back. Like, they've been gone a couple days and haven't come back, which is not the normal. Like, they should have been gone a day, and not even a full day, like just gone and got it, come back, and they've been gone a couple days. So Spraull goes through, he heals as many people as he can, and then they start using bandages, which is a great help. And they bring in the supplies. They have all this butchered meat from the dead oxen, and they throw up like a huge feast. Spraull obviously has got a couple kegs of the best ale that the Temple of Throster could send. So it's actually a really good moment for the refugees, and it really gets the party. These party members, they're very well received by the refugees. So during this little celebration, they see Esmeralda sorting her gear, and she's Bothild is sitting there drinking next to her, and she's sorting her gear, and they find out that she's planning on to go into the forest to try to find her cousins, and they agree to help her. And Bothild agrees to like lead them, kind of guide them through there, because she has a little bit more experience in this area than other people, and especially the players. So that's kind of where we ended the session. I don't think there's anything else, any high points I missed. If there is, my players that watch the review can chime in and fill in the gaps, which would be great. It was a good session. We had fun, a lot of fun. I set up this terrain and then I never used it. So I had this all covered up. That tower and that stuff, that wasn't part of it. That was just some stuff I was showing them afterwards. But the two boards I had set up and had them covered, and then when the battles came, this was going to be where the Boulay fight was. So this is a lot of homemade terrain, and then that road is a Monster Fight Club road, which is actually really neat because they're reversible. So you have a little river on the other side if you want. This is pretty cool. Those are pretty good. I like the road a lot. I've used it a few times, but I don't know, it just happened, and then I didn't bother to pull it out. Like, we just did it Theater of the Mind, which was fine. And this was going to be where the fight with the orcs and helping Bothild out. But I didn't use that either. We just did that Theater of the Mind, and then I pulled the sheet off after the game and showed them what was underneath there. So I think they probably thought there was more coming, and I just hadn't revealed it. But what was interesting is everybody, I mean, my group, obviously, if you look around, we use a lot of miniatures and terrain. But they were fine with Theater of the Mind, and I kind of like it sometimes, too. It definitely can make things easier, like, logistically, you know, like just trying to get things set up. Or having the right stuff that you want, you know, for a physical product, and then just do it Theater of the Mind. You don't have to worry about it. So I like to mix mediums. I don't like to be stuck in just one. So that's what happened with the miniatures and terrain. I had a couple new miniatures. I'll show these real quick. This is, let's see if I can get it on there. This is a 3D print from my friend across the pond, Andy. He printed this and sent it to me. This is an official Dragonbane miniature, which I love. The Dragonbane RPG, one of my favorites. He sent me this and a bunch of other stuff because he's a good dude. And I painted it up real quick, and I used this as Esmeralda Whitfoot. So that was really good. And then I had this one. This is the one I got for Bothild. Let's see if I can get it in there. Yeah. So this is a Reaper Bones miniature. It's a new one. I think it's Hyborian. I don't know if they call it Hyborian female or Hyborian female barbarian. I don't know. I think it's a newer one. They have a male counterpart to it. But I painted this one up real quick and used it. I'm using it for her, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, so like I said, that board, mostly stuff I made, except for, actually all stuff I made except for the road. And then this stuff here is a combination of, you've seen the board itself before. That's insulation foam. Just carved all those bricks because I thought I needed to lose some brain cells carving 10,000 bricks. And 3D printed terrain, so from various people. I got Tabletop World. I don't remember. I got this from Etsy shop. Crap, I just forgot their name. It's Centurion something. I've gotten a few prints for them. That one over there is a work in progress that's from them. And then the other two, I got those probably off Etsy. I know I got those off Etsy, but I just don't remember where. But my ruined town terrain is growing. I have a few other pieces that are in the works, but I guess all in due time. But yeah, so that's a review for episode 35. doing real well. We're almost 2 years into the campaign. We already set a date for next month. I'm hoping that we might be able to get a little bit more frequency of play through the summer, which some maybe smaller games. I know my buddy Dave is always up for some one-offs, and my boy's coming home the first part of next month, so should be in next month's session, and hopefully I can get him in some of those sessions so he can get some extra play time in while he's home from college. So I'm looking forward to that. Any questions about the game, our campaign, the terrain, or anything like that, feel free to fire them off. And I appreciate you all watching. Thanks.